Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today I'm going to do something different, something that I have never done before. Explain the story of something. And normally these kind of explanation videos you might have seen for movies, books, or TV series like Ending Explained. But I think I have to do something about time stories because I think it gets a lot of negative press based on, well, a kind of bad ending that it did. But I think that's because many people didn't go through the effort of going through all the additional material that's available on the website that the creators had provided. And I agree that some of the things are not kept up to date on the website. But if you link all those things together and you have to take into account a lot of expansions that they have released and stitch up all the story, then you're going to see the overarching story. Now, don't expect a very detailed story of everything, but they have created a world of their own, which I can draw parallels to something like Assassin's Creed. Where in Assassin's Creed there is a real world where a scientific company is the Templars are actually letting you go back in time or experience the memories of someone back in time. Similar is the concept going to be in time stories. That even though the main game is going to be concentrated on that back era, previous timeline, but the overarching story is happening actually in the current modern timeline. Now, let's start from the beginning. The time stories, and I'm going to actually put them more in chronological order rather than explaining, but I will try to explain what story elements get revealed in each of the expansions, which are critical to the main overarching story of time stories. I will not go into detail of the actual things that you get to do in each of the missions, but of course, there are going to be spoilers. So, in case you have not played Time Stories and do want to play Time Stories, then I recommend you play the game first and then come back to this video to understand that yes, there is an overarching story and it's actually good. Now, let's go back in the beginning because we have to understand that how it all started. And of course, the main game or many of the expansions are not going to tell you all of the story in one go. There are certain hints left in each of the game boxes which are going to slowly reveal that story. So, in the beginning, that's before time, that's before the Big Bang, before Earth was created, there is shown a very destructive alien race. You can say, well, alien because, well, they are not humans, which are called the Eloys. Eloys are, they worship or they kind of are inspired by space creatures, black space creatures who exist out of time. So you can consider them creatures like Cthulhu or elder gods that are our elder ones which exists out of time, and Elois is a destructive or chaos feeding creatures who are actually in favor of those creatures. So Elois are that faction. And the other big faction in this ones are going to be the Scions. The Scions are shape-shifting creatures which go head to head against Elois because they want order in the timeline. They don't want chaos. After the Big Bang, after the Earth was created, Scions were there even before humans were there. And that's the, again, the lore that Time Stories has created. So these are kind of super beings, shape-shifting super beings, and they were the first ones who found the key or found the magic for time travel. Now, Scions have time travel and Elois and are fighting against Elois who are the destructive force and they feed on chaos. They want everything to be in chaos and Scions are trying to stop them. So that was happening long time back Now, coming to once you have understood these two factions, let's come to our timeline, which is Earth. Now, what's happening on Earth? There is one of the creatures of Elois, a Cthulhu creature that was left on Earth after the Big Bang, and it got frozen in the Antarctic Ocean. Maybe it's in the later my this story will be limited to the white cycle, the first set of 8 expansions that came with the game. I think in the next cycle, which is called the blue cycle, they did have more explanation of how the creature got trapped. But anyway, in our story, the creature, one of the Elois creature, one of the Cthulhu creatures, is already trapped in Antarctica. Now, there is also some science who are here on Earth as well, but they don't interfere. The humans being have evolved naturally. Many turmoils have come beyond our natural. In the 25th century, one of the professors, Professor Ron, finds the key to time travel through scientific means. The human nations have progressed a lot in science, and they have found the key to science, to time travel through science, not through magic. Now, once they have discovered the key to time travel, the next thing they discover is that Professor Ron actually takes the help of one of the another bureaucrat and scientist, Dr. Deirdre, and their daughter Laura. Now, those who have played Time Stories will remember Laura being a holographic character in the game, which helps out from time to time. That's the same Laura, but in 25th century, she was an actual woman. She was one of the scientists who helped create the time traveling devices. Now, they discovered time travel, and Bob or Robert was one of the first time agents who went back in time and was helping them experiment with this technology. So they were the first team who got it done. At that time, there was one of the scions who was on Earth who had shapeshifted into a human being. That was Rovitsky, and Roziski, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, got interested because he was a science hidden as a human being. He got interested and wanted to actually be with that team. So he got a job there as a security guard, but later on asked to actually join the and be used as a guinea pig for the experiment. So slowly he got assigned with Bob to actually go on time travels and slowly become an agent himself. So Bob and Robitsky are two of the agents, while the three scientists are Professor Ron, the Deirdre's, and the last one is his daughter Laura. Now, Laura drowned in a lake. Her story is revealed very little, but she drowned in a lake, and Robitsky was actually had fallen in love with her. So once she drowned in the lake, he was heartbroken. Also was his father. So what his father did was he made the holographic Laura, the artificial intelligence, which is going to actually run the time agency in the future, just to keep the memories of Laura alive. That's what he did. But during this time, also what started to happen was Professor Ron, while they were doing these time travels, Professor Ron found out that there was another being, another creature, another race called the Scions who were traveling through time as well. So to him, anything which he is not experienced with, or he doesn't know, or isn't human being, feels like a threat. So he doesn't know about the Elois, but he now knows about Scions who are also doing time travel. So he thinks that these are bad guys and they are trying to actually ruin the timeline or change the timeline. So then he pleads through the bureaucratic channel, through Dr. Deirdre, that let's make a proper agency which is going to fight the changing of timeline against human beings. So they go to different nations of the world, and a full-fledged funding of this time agency development is done. So they give the funding. A board of directors is formed, and that board of directors is called the consortium. The consortium funds the development of Time Agency, for which we are the agents. So the Time Agency works under the consortium's watchful eye. The consortium is paid by different businessmen, different agencies all across the world. So they have their own private agendas behind it that, well, they are the richest people in the world, so they don't want changes in the timeline. Whatever has happened in the timeline, it has happened for their benefit. So they want to retain the same things in the world, and that's why they are funding it. And consortium keeps a strict eye on the Time Agency that they do exactly that, because the Time Agency is purely a scientific firm. Now, that's where we catch up to Time Stories, the first mission, that now we are agents of Time Stories. And Bob, who used to be a time agent himself, or one of the first ones, is now a commander, a trainer, and he has now assigned his own team, which is called the Team B, and they are now being sent on missions to actually fix the timeline. So whenever they see the timeline being changed by science or anyone, well, they still think every anomaly is because science are trying to do something else. They go and try to fix that anomaly so that out of the ordinary things don't happen. And that brings us to the base case of Time Story, which is set in an asylum. So in the asylum where you're sent, some anomaly is happening. You will get to discover that actually they are trying to do some cultist magic and trying to open portals, or and trying to bring creatures to life which are not supposed to exist. So for example, we get to experience a manticore, which again does not exist in the actual neutral timeline, what the game calls NT. So many of these games are going to have NT or AT as a timeline description. So the neutral timeline is what the Time Agency wants to maintain, that the neutral timeline should remain as such. So a manticore existed there. So one of the things that you get to do is actually kill that manticore, which gives you a gem, and using that gem, you are able to actually put that in a statue, which gives you your first data cube. That data cube will become a continuous part of Time Stories, a continuum through all the expansions. You currently don't understand, but the card specifically says that store this card for your future expansions, future games as well, because this will become important. So the story leaves you with a cliffhanger about what that cubes are, and you will get to know about them later on. But of course, you stop the ritual, and after that, you are able to actually put the neutral timeline back on the normal track. So those cultist activities, those portals didn't exist. So no manticore existed, and the timeline returns to normal. So that was your first task. After that, we get to see the first expansion, which is the Marcy case. Now, the Marcy case is said to be in 1992 neutral timeline. In 1992, so that's we have to understand that we exist in 25th century now in this game. So when we actually go to the Marcy case, in this one, what we experience is actually that timeline, again, another anomaly has occurred. And in this timeline, what has happened is that one of this Rhinefield, I think was the name of the town, that has been overrun by zombies. But our mission is, well, not to fix the zombie issue, but to save one of the girls there, which is called Marcy. And why she's going to be important is never revealed in this expansion pack. The only thing Bob tells us is that she's important due to her special genetic nature, due to her special thing, but we are never told why that is. That will come through some of the logs that you will get to read later on via other expansions. So just for continuity, that's what I'm going to tell. But just for your information, if you complete this, that part of the story, that why she was important, is actually never revealed in this at the end of this game. Few things odd things that you will get to experience here is that you do get to experience Robisky for the first time. He comes in a helicopter and uses a DNA scanner to check that do you have the actual Marcy that they are looking for or not. So that tells us in 1992 DNA scanners were not invented at that time. So that tells us that the agency has the ability to actually send objects through time as well. And Rubitsky is going to be again a big part of the story, because even though after losing Laura he has kind of lost his mind, but he spends most of his time going to alternate timelines, previous timelines. He has no interest left in the real world itself. And we will get to see that later on, because we will get to experience him throughout all the missions. So in the Marcy case, we save the actual Marcy, but at the end of the game, the actual receptacles that were used during that mission, they all die in the zombie apocalypse. They don't save anyone. They only take Marcy back, and the whole town is flooded with zombies and everyone gets killed. So Bob isn't in favor of that. There was a dispute with Bob and others regarding that. But the important thing was not that dispute. The important thing was that why Marcy was important. So Marcy and Rovisky actually get married later on in the story, and they had a baby called Tess Hayden. And Tess is going to be the girl who is going to save the agency far, far, far into the future in the 25th century. So in the very last mission, you will get to experience a girl called Tess Hayden who is going to come and save the agency itself. And that's why Marcy was important, because Tess Hayden has a special genes which is going to be important not only for a future mission, but is also expected to save the agency. Because what Professor Ron has actually seen is that he went into the future and then saw that the time agency was being destroyed. And there he saw that what needs to happen, and so he has started to actually change some of the mission's objectives just so that those certain events can happen through us and the time agency can be saved. One of which starts with Marcy, because if Marcy dies in that zombie apocalypse, then Tess will not be born, and well, the time agency cannot be saved through the means that he has seen. So that's why Marcy case is important for that. The next expansion that we get to experience is a Prophecy of Dragons, which is then set in 750 553 80, which is the alternate timeline. Now, this is the first time that we actually get to know from the game that scions exist. Before that, scions have never been mentioned, but in this one, we get to experience two new things. First of all, that alternate timelines can exist, alternate planets can even exist. So in this alternate timeline, magic exists, other creatures exist, dragons exist, and there is a prophecy that dragons will come and devour all the world. But one of the scions have taken over the mind of a king, and our objective is, because again, still Professor Ron thinks scions are the one who are causing this destruction, so he sends us to actually free the king from that scion, and we are able to do it. But at the end, we find out that actually maybe scions are not the bad guys, because at the end he says things like, well, that we are not doing the right thing, and we have cursed the whole world of destruction because we stopped the scions. And that's exactly what happened, because the dragons now come and take over the world. So the dragon force in this one is shown as being controlled by Eloys, who are feeding by destruction or chaos, and they wreak chaos on this alternate timeline. And that's why this world never progress, and the magical world finishes after that, because the chaos destroys this timeline itself. because we helped that, because we never understood that science were just trying to help us out. Then comes the third expansion. So at least science were introduced by this expansion. Then came the third expansion under the mask, in which we went back to Egypt. And this one again, we got to experience science as well. One of the thieves who had stolen the pharaoh's mask, which we had to return, so that the normal timeline, because this is set in the normal timeline, can remain as such, because the pharaoh's mask after has to be there for the normal timeline to exist. Now what we experience is that one of the thieves was a science, but later on what we find out through other science is that that's a rogue group of thieves of science who just don't care about timelines. So they are science, they are from the race, but they don't represent the whole science race. And they are just rogue, they just wanted to steal few things, and that's not the objective. So they are kind of not representing the true aim of science. And this actually helps us tell more about the science, that yes, other science, just like there can be bad human beings and good human beings, there can be similar things in science as well, but that does not mean that the overall all the science are bad. The next expansion I'm going to talk very less about, which is the Estrella Drive, because this in this Estrella Drive we get to go back in time for one of the solve one of the mass murder cases which happened in one of the real life in Hollywood. But this expansion can be played at any time because, well, it doesn't link to any of the overarching stories. The only thing that happens is after you play this, so it doesn't progress anything else. So this was never linked to any of the other stories. The only thing that happens after Estrella Drive is that Sam, which is one of the robots that help us, starts to malfunction because there was no real objective in this. Maybe that was the problem, that after this, when you play the next expansion, which is the Expedition Endurance, this the Sam robot in the start of the game starts saying the data cube is missing and it starts malfunctioning. So you are assigned a different robot to guide you on your receptacles. So maybe something happens, but overall nothing important in Estrella Drive. Then comes Expedition Endurance, which is set in 1914 normal time. Again, this is takes an inspiration from real life events when a real life, I think, transatlantic ship or something went missing in the Atlantic Ocean in the Antarctica, and this one puts a Cthulhu mythos on top of that. That maybe there was a Cthulhu, they got stuck there, and that's why they went missing. And this brings us to the theory behind Elois. First of all, that yes, Elois exist, and they are the Cthulhu type race they do exist. They are frozen on Earth, but they do exist in universe. We got to know about stasis gel, which is the green gel. This will become an important part of the story as slowly after these happenings, Professor Ron will start explaining few more things to Robert, because things are now becoming more and more serious, and Professor Ron is going to tell Bob about few things, not all, but few things he's going to tell. And the next two missions are going to become very crucial for that. Which brings us to Lumen Fidei. So Lumen Fidei is we are taken back in 1419 in Spain, and this is the first mission in which we see those factions for the first time. So Elois, we see Saul Kahula, I think his name is, who is a messenger of Elois, and he's on top of Granda Hill, and he's doing some magic and trying to actually, what they're trying to do in the game is that there have been a jewel or emerald or stone of Lilith found, which gives Elois the power of chaos, and Saul is trying to reclaim that. So it's one of their important relics, whereas we are assigned, as well as science are assigned, to reclaim that, because again it's a powerful relic and whoever controls it will have the power, so we need to get it back. Now in this one, you will have three options near the end of the game, that you can support the science, because the science is represented by one of the jinns in the game. So jinns in English just means genie. So there is a genie in this one, which you can help out, and that science. So you can openly see that, yeah, science are not bad. It's actually the Eloys, the Saul Kahola, who is the messenger of, they are the bad ones, and science are actually trying to stop them. So you can actually try to help them, which will let you not only get a cube, but will take an imprint of the stone and will take away the stone, so that even the time agency who really don't understand what they are dealing with can get away with it. Or you can give away that stone to Saul Kahula. And the ending that you're going to get, again, you will have to scan the QR code, you will have to go to the website, enter the code there, and accordingly you will get a different ending based on which side did you partnered up with the time agency, with Elois, or with the science, and accordingly the ending is going to change. But the main canon story, what's going to happen is that you are going to help out the science, but also at the same time things are going to reveal, which will give you the hint that the consortium, which is the board of directors or the agency which controls the time agency, has maybe some people being controlled by the Elois. So Elois do have the mind control ability, and they are controlling people in the consortium itself. So if they are controlling the consortium, then that means they have their agenda. They want you to fail some of these missions and let the thing go to Elois themselves. And that's why these things are happening. Because for few of the next missions, you will see that Bob resists sending Team B on the mission, but the consortium actually forces the team to be sent, because they want these things to happen. Because after expedition endurance, what happens is the team is in a weak state. They have gained insanity, and the consortium thinks that this team is now very weak and will give in to Saul Kahula or Elois, and will make things happen as they want. So the consortium has been shown now turn towards more towards affiliation towards the Elois, whereas time agency who worked for them, who we are part of, have slowly started gaining sympathy for the science. So even though we started as a neutral party, but now these links are shifting. And that's what Lumen Fidei helps us do, that it shifts those perceptions. Another important thing that is going to happen is that, of course, you're going to get these cubes, but you're going to give the imprint of these. The little bit more information about what these cubes are going to come now at the end of this one, end of this expansion. And Professor Ron is going to reveal that actually these cubes are a byproduct of time travel. So whenever people are time traveling, whenever something happens which is not supposed to happen in that timeline, an anomaly gets created, and organic matter is being transferred to a different timeline. So to curtail the after effects of that, he created these cubes to contain the additional data that never happened. So that was the idea of creating these data cubes, or quantum cubes, which is the official name, these quantum cubes. So they don't exist in time, and that's why these are not material objects and they can travel back and forth. So he created these cubes. But when he found out about the agency's destruction, what he started to do was actually encode some of time agency's data in these data cubes. Why? Because he knew that the time agency itself is no longer safe. So he is starting to send the technological data through these data cubes, these are encoded back in time as well. What happens is that these data cubes, whoever touches them, picks them up, whoever is bringing them back, this data gets encoded to them. So now, whenever we are getting this data cubes back to the time agency, this data is actually getting encoded back to us. And that's why the team B has to collect all these data cubes, and these data cubes have the time agency critical technical data which can be used that in case if the time agency is no longer there, is destroyed, then this data can be used to recreate a new time agency. Because Professor Ron has already seen and checked, there is no avoiding, time agency is going to get destroyed. So the only thing that can be done is create a new time agency that can in future fight whoever is destroying. That's what he didn't know. But after the events of these things, he then realizes that actually science are trying to help them. And few of those hints we see in other missions as well, even starting with, for example, the Marcy case. One of the science is shown when the helicopter is getting flown away and Marcy is getting flown away. There is someone shown with a bazooka and one of the army guys who is trying to blow up the helicopter, and one of the science comes and stops that missile from being bazooka from being fired, and the helicopter is safe. So the science have been helping in getting this work done. So science are trying to help the time agency but not the consortium. And then comes to the second last expansion, Brotherhood of the Coast. Now in this one, similar to Team B, there has been also a Team S. They take the receptacles of four brothers, four pirates, and what we found out is one of them, we have to actually bring them back. That's our objective, because we don't want to create anomalies of agents being left back in time. What we found out is one of them is loyal to the agency. He tries to help us out. One of them has become loyal to science. One of them has become loyal to Eloise, and that's what we have to stop. Because what he wants to do is bring the data cube. They have found the information regarding the data cube. So Sam the robot, when he was corrupted, has been reprogrammed by Consortium, and now he has been acting as a spy to transfer information back to them. And that's what we now find out, that one of the Team S agents is actually a pirate and wants to take that data cube back to Eloise. Why? And this is the key thing that will lead to the destruction of the time agency. Because each of these data cubes get programmed by Professor Ron. So they always have the encoded information of the location from where they were encoded. The location of the time agency is not on Earth. The time agency itself is located in a separate, different galaxy, on a separate planet somewhere, floating on a station somewhere. The location is not known to anyone except Laura, which is the AI. So the location is somewhere. Nobody knows about it other than the AI itself. But when that data cube gets encoded by Laura, the information of the origin of that data cube is also encoded on it. And that's the information Eloise need to find out where the time agency is, so that they can stop them permanently from stopping their chaos. Because time agency is the one, other than science, who have been stopping them from creating this chaos that they want. So they want to destroy the time agency. And now it's clear to Professor Ron as well as Bob at this stage, because Professor Ron then reveals everything to Bob, that this is what's happening, so he has to help them out. So we are sent back to Team S to actually go and get Team S back. Now we try to complete the mission, we do get that back, but one of the problems that happen is that data cube got cracked or something. I'm trying to remember what happened, but that data cube did get some information, did get transferred back to the Eloise. And it was because when we come back, I think we get that information later on that data cube was empty or something. So even though we got the data cubes, we completed the mission, but Eloys were successful in getting the information that they needed. But at the same time, when we will put the information, the QR code back in the app, we also get more information on the website that what happened afterwards. And that was that later on, the SSU, which is the security special security forces for the consortium, actually comes and raids the time agency. And at that time, they capture Bob, puts the time agents in jail as well, because consortium has found out that we have been trying to help someone else. The data cubes are being stolen, and maybe we are helping the science, which is not allowed. So all of that gets revealed that something bad has been happening in the time agency, and even things like the data converter or something which gives additional time units are being sent by Bob unsanctioned to us to help us out. They wanted the time agents to fail, and Bob helped the time agents to succeed. So they put Bob in jail as well. They know Bob is not helping the consortium, he's working against them. So Bob is put under jail just like T.I.M.E as well. And that's where the story of this one finishes. Now, most of the agents get their memory wiped as well, because when they go through so many time loops, their memories start to juggle up in their minds together as well. Especially after expedition endurance, we get to know about this, that different neuroscientists actually have to reprogram their minds so that they don't have those kind of after effects of insanity, and they can forget many of those things. And same things happen here as well, that we retain some of those memories but not all. And that's why we know some information is there, something bad happened, but something else is going to happen in the future for which we might not have all the memory. That brings us now to the last expansion, Madame, which is set in 1673 normal timeline. Now, Madame is starts in a unique fashion. Bob doesn't exist anymore in this timeline, and that's weird for us. We do remember Bob was there, even though the last memory of Bob was that we were captured. But now we see a different kind of environment in Madame, and what's we see a new kind of handler, a kind of a TV show host who is called Mike, who is asking us to get imprints of famous people. So the objective of the mission is weird. It's not to stop the anomalies, it's to get imprints, like they're doing kind of a reality show to get different people's imprints. And that's what they are asking us to do. Now, in this one, when we go back, an anomaly is created due to us. And that's will be revealed later, that that's why Bob didn't exist right now, because we created the anomaly by doing the mission that they had asked. Because when we get one of the things that's written in the manual of time stories original boxes, that the time agency found a very non-threatening way or less damaging way of doing time travel, which is they always let control the receptacles which were most susceptible, and only got control of those so that anomalies were created were very less. But here, that's not what they were following, because Mike is not really that kind of time agency agent. So when we were teleported in front of a carriage, but that carriage was helping take one of the ancestors of Bob. And due to that, the horses think that, okay, or the horse carriage people think that, okay, these are raiders trying to rob them. They stop, a commotion happens at that location. And all of this get revealed later on. We just see the commotion where we start, we see just the commotion. And later on, we found out that Bob has never been born, because she was supposed to go and reach and meet someone and fall in love, And we stopped all that process by actually transferring and creating an anomaly at such a location. So we disturbed the normal timeline and created an anomaly. So this timeline was never supposed to happen. Anyway, Laura comes, helps us out, tries to fix things up. We have to do a lot of runs in this one, trying to fix the anomaly that we have created. Well, we find out that we have created it and artificially may help those two people who were supposed to fall in love meet each other and then fall in love with each other again, so that the ancestry can continue and Bob can again be there in future. But bad timing for Bob. By the time we return back, Eloise have started their attack on the time agency. At that time, as soon as we return back, we get to see one of the dead bodies in one of the caissons through which we travel, and that dead body is of Bob. So Bob has died. Laura, the artificial intelligence, while trying to do this effort, dies as well. So the main key parts of, well, at least the two main people of the time agency die in that incident by the time hole that has been created by the Eloise. So all of this is happening, but at that time, the image of Tess Hayden appears. Professor Ron knew that at this time, Tess Hayden will be able to actually approach the Team B, and that's the time when they will use the data cubes to transfer the information as well as themselves to a safe location. And at that time, this is where the first cycle is about to end. As soon as you solve that, the cubes or the data stored in those cubes become functional, and all the critical data of time agency along with yourself are teleported elsewhere, and the previous time agency is all destroyed. But we know a hope is left that Tess Hayden and the agents have been teleported elsewhere along with the time agency data to start new. And next time, time stories, the next cycle, the time stories revolution will start, where science and time agency, well, the new time agency, are going to work together to fight against the Eloise, because now they know who the real enemy is. So that's the overall story of time stories. Again, a lot of things, there are things that are confusing in this story, but there was a lot of material on the website and you had to go through a lot of reading to actually make some sense out of it. But I hope I completed just the gist of things so that it's more meaningful to you that what actually happened in time stories. People give a bad rep to Madame just because the ending was not clear. I'll say it was not clear because maybe you didn't pay attention to what happened in the previous stories and the details that were given before. That doesn't mean the expansion was bad. It just means that how the information was presented was maybe not clear. Yes. But anyway, time stories was a pretty good time for me. These were such wonderful times that we had with time stories, and it's an incredibly unique story. Just I'll say the presentation could have been much more simpler, because I think the board game community would prefer something more simple, something more accessible, maybe something written which they can find in the box to read after they have completed the mission, rather than trying to figure out what they need to read on a website where some of the links are even broken. So for example, even if you go to, at the time of recording of this mission, if you go there, the after Estrella Drive, that information is missing. The Brotherhood of Coast and Madame mission is missing, has missing information. But if you use the QR code, maybe you will be taken to the correct page, but it's not easily linkable from the main page of the website itself. So there is a lot of information mislinked, broken on the website. So it's not an ideal website, but the information is there. You just need to dig it up. So not the ideal way to get information, but hopefully I have given you enough information about what the whole story is about. And if you enjoyed that and want to experience the story, again, I have given you the overall fluff, not the actual missions themselves. And if that gave you interest, try these expansions out because it's still a very nice story for you to experience. Hopefully, that was entertaining for you. That's it for me. Happy gaming.